Hi, Avanti. I I will just be giving an oral presentation without slides, as with the change in date, I didn't have adequate time to prepare um, all the slides, and that's fine. So can you hear me?
Yes, Gabriel, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so I'll get started. So hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Dr. Gabriel Axel Montes, and what I really wanted to talk to you today about was really my general topic is the synthesis of all the disparate artificial intelligence and next generation technologies, and how do we bring them together in a way that really helps humanity in a substantial and meaningful way and helps us evolve our technology with our culture. As Avanti said in my bio, I have worked in human resources. I've been head of people for a growing remote organization working in artificial intelligence, specifically artificial general intelligence, which aims to really recreate or model general intelligence in silico. So it really, instead of just narrow AIs like machine learning, taking different narrow AIs and bringing them together into a cohesive whole. So I founded my own organization, which is a think and do tank and a consultancy, and sort of spinning off different companies and technologies. So that's called Neural Axis, which refers, of course, to the central channel of the human body, and also reflects my background as a neuroscientist and my sort of inclination to focus on the human nervous system, because we are at the center of perception, right? Our bodies, our minds, all our senses are converging here on our body and our mind, and there is from here is where we make sense of the world, and we make sense of complexity. Now, the world is getting more and more complex every day, as we see in the news and social media, and as our global village learns to interact with itself and all the different parts of the world. And the human brain has really been wired to be egotistical and tribal. And that wasn't inherently a bad thing back when we were in tribes. We could look after ourselves, we could look after our tribe. But as the planet has scaled and population has increased, there has been a greater difficulty in managing all the information that's coming at us. It's like an assault. So my approach to artificial intelligence is really coming from that perspective of how to synthesize, how to make sense of things, etc. So if we look at the main emerging technologies now, which is artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality, robotics, blockchain, and Internet of Things, those five main things are converging more and more, and they need to be interacting more and more. Not to mention that there are multiple types of artificial intelligences. There's machine learning, there's genetic algorithms, there's probabilistic logic. There's many different techniques that can be used in the AI world. So these things together comprise what can be called the spatial web. And in one of my previous experiences in working for a company called Versus, they were working on developing an operating system, and they are still working. I'm still, in contact with them and closely associated with them. So they're working on a spatial web operating system for all the different AIs, for all these different components that can work in different warehouses and work in supply chain and work in augmented reality. So they have contracts with big logistics companies, with AstraZeneca, with Volvo, with Deloitte, and other places, other companies that basically need these things to make sense of all their data. So this is a kind of way that is really useful to think about now, is how do we make all these different things talk to each other? How is it presented to the user in a way that makes sense? So you basically need an operating system, or at the very least, a way for different AIs to talk to each other. So at SingularityNet, Dr. Ben Gertzel and colleagues have innovated AI DSL, or domain-specific language, that allows, it's like a wrapper for different AI agents to be able to talk to each other in an interoperable way. So these kinds of technologies are crucial for really preparing for the increase in AI. And we've actually seen just in the past 2 months, a humongous surge in artificial intelligence use. The use of OpenAI's ChatGPT surpassed 100 million users in the first month of release, which is more than Instagram, more than any app in history, I believe, has been said. And ChatGPT is an LLM, or a large language model, which is now being, and it's open source, which is now being multi-purposed for different applications, ranging from crafting social media copying to passing the medical exams and legal exams and things like that. So, and there's many more. And what's going to be important there, really above everything, is for each organization to have proprietary data, their own proprietary data set that they need to make sense of. And things like ChatGPT can serve as a sort of customized search engine for organizations. So at Neural Axis, what are we doing in my organization to further our way towards interoperability, towards neuroscience and human-centered and experience-centered exploration of these technologies? I should also say that in my neuroscience education, I also became a yoga instructor for 4 years and studied Hindu yogas, Chinese and Taoist, and all sorts of different traditions, not because I was so interested in necessarily the cultural aspect, but because I was interested in the underlying sort of ancient methods for changing the mind, for helping the mind focus or helping the mind heal. These things reveal that there is so much more about the brain and the mind and the body than science has really fully recognized. Because let's remember the truth. Science, the method is different from science as an institution. The institution of science uses funding to further specific lines and agendas of research. And that's dictated by institutions, and institutions are dictated by money. So not all of science is going to, as an institution, is going to reveal in publications everything that is known. It must constantly advance, and one must maintain a degree of humility epistemically with what one knows. So what are we doing in Neural Axis? So we have just completed some early research on a topic passionate to myself and us, which is identification and authentication based upon biometric signals. So one thing we did was we identified various lung disorders of the lungs, pulmonary, using artificial intelligence. So this is the ability to detect different, depending on your lung breathing sounds, can you identify the kind of lung disorder you have? This is very useful for medical settings. So establishing precision health, precision analytics, and what I often refer to in my own, aspirations as precision consciousness. Can we identify specific dimensions of the mind and the body that can be targeted with certain interventions and have certain results? So we've been able to use an artificial intelligence technique called AdaBoost, which basically takes the weak links in the data and finds the connections between them to draw statistically strong conclusions. We've also been able to identify heart attacks, myocardial infarctions using the same technique. Both of the high accuracy rate. So we're talking about 95, 97% accuracy in identifying these specific ailments within each specific tissue. We also have very new and unreleased data showing that you can use electroencephalogram, EEG, so this is for the brain, to identify a user, a specific individual, just on their default brain waves with an accuracy of 95%. And we can use a very small number of electrodes, just 2 electrodes in certain areas of the brain with an 85% accuracy. So this is quite novel, and this allows the thesis here. So I'm working on this technology, this proprietary technology. The thesis with the EEG here is the importance for cybersecurity to have very secure forms of authentication. Passwords, fingerprints, ID cards, all these kinds of things are antiquated technologies. And password is a very risky way of authenticating something. And we all know that we're forgetting all our passwords all the time. I forget one password at least once a week at this point. Started back a couple of years ago. I don't know about you, but forgetting passwords is becoming more and more common. So now there are password managers, thankfully. So I started experimenting with those. But this is the kind of thing that is beleaguering the mind. It's too many things to interact with and too many new password requirements. And forget about it when quantum AI is released into the wild. It'll be able to crack any password. So the wrong person using these things, the wrong entity, can have malicious intent and hack passwords very easily. So the mind, I believe, should be at the forefront of more and more things. The mind was the original computer. It is the original computer. It still is. There are realms of the mind that are more advanced than the most advanced computers. Advanced computers can do logical computations faster than the human mind can. That said, the unconscious and superconscious processing abilities of the brain and the body still remain more powerful. So if anyone's interested in that, they should look at my paper called Causal Biomimesis. You could find all this information on my website, which I will share in the chat. And you can look at there on the research section. It's not even fully updated with the most recent publications that I've mentioned about the lungs, heart, and EEG. So the authentication piece is going to be very important. So I anticipate that'll be very exciting as it develops more. There's a few other things I'm working on. Number one is the well-being aspect of things. So I've sort of looked at what can be called micro practices or micro interventions, which is, instead of becoming a yogi and going to the Himalayas to meditate for your whole life and be in contact with Lord Shiva and all that, you can bring these elements into your daily life in micro versions. You can do 30 seconds to 5 minutes of small practices that target specific aspects of the brain and the body. And that can be combined with artificial intelligence to generate new practices based on the user in a personalized and targeted way. So that's in prototype stage right now. And I'm doing that in concert with SingularityNet, which you can find at singularitynet.io. Something else another component that we're working on is governance in Web3 or what's called Web3, which is essentially blockchain and cryptocurrency world. I think that's just the infrastructure level, the blockchain aspect. Web 3.0 with a capital W is more like the spatial web. I highly recommend that people look at the spatial web. So I'll type it in here. These are all companies that I am affiliated with and that we're good friends with. So check them out. So Web3 lowercase is really the blockchain and crypto aspect side of things. So what we're doing there is creating governance frameworks. So delegate groups that don't understand how to vote in different DAOs, in different decentralized autonomous organizations, which are sort of blockchain organizations that are decentralized and they have decentralized governance mechanisms, and you have to be very involved and hands-on and voting all the time and logging that all on the blockchain. There are external expert groups that can be delegates that are that can take a part in votes, and people on the blockchain can allow delegate groups to vote for them. So we have something there called Gov3, which is in sort of closed beta stage on the Cardano blockchain, which allows different delegate groups to take part in the governance efforts of different DAOs or sort of blockchain groups. There's another aspect which is important of what we're doing in Neural Axis. This is a separate topic. Is financial stock trading using the mind and biometric signals. So we believe that we can help people to do financial trading, whether it's cryptocurrency or financial stocks, using the biometrics to understand the person's emotional state to inform them of how they feel when they're trading. That's the front end for the user. On the back end, we can tell an exchange, a cryptocurrency exchange, or the operator, the risky behavior that person is taking according to their own history, to the amount of funds they've deposited, and so on and so forth. So these things help the exchange understand how their users are behaving. It helps exchanges sort of be more responsible, which looks great for regulators, and it allows the user to know the exchange is sort of looking out for them if they're offering front-end tools as well to help the user understand their trading patterns. So we're working with a couple of pilot partners now on that in the cryptocurrency sphere. And sort of the next step of this is really going into venture capital to support the different companies that are working in this area towards these different angles. You see how the different things that I've shared. So it's authentication at the health level, authentication at the personal level, okay, the EEG, the health with heart and lungs and so on. Schizophrenia is another one I didn't mention. So identifying, being able to diagnose, preliminarily, biometrically diagnose schizophrenia with EEG. That's another thing we've done successfully with 97% accuracy. So health, biometrics, and identification, personal authentication, well-being, and governance for the new internet, basically, and including funky applications like financial trading, are ways of injecting more of the mind, bringing the mind to the forefront. That is the sort of thesis of neural access. And the reason for that is because there are different dimensions of the mind that we want to make available when they're in the forefront. If the mind is sitting in the back all the time, the internet will not be governed in a way that is representative of what the mind is really capable of. And the more that we release things like OpenAI, ChatGPT into the wild, these things, the more we're going to be representing humanity's old achievements and accelerating them forward. And the thing is, we're constantly learning as a species. But if we're constantly taking AI, which is based on training data from our past decisions and our past, internet publications and so on, it doesn't model our most current cutting edge learning. So it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. What's on the internet is not in total the highest achievements of humanity. The highest achievements are always in between the lines. in the way we create, the way we collaborate, and so on. So it's important to take into account the ethical side of this. And I am quite interested in AI ethics. It's sort of how I got into artificial intelligence in the first place, is through the ethical side, because AI is essentially an externalization of the human mind. Since the Stone Age and earlier, humans have been playing with their environment by building things. And we do that by taking our goals and our ideas and turning them into tools that can do the job for us. This is humans functioning in duality, right? There's the internal world of consciousness and there's the external world of physical reality. And we want to play and act in physical reality because we have open hands. Our open hands mean that we're standing, our hands are facing the world. They're not on the ground like a four-legged animal. Our hands are open loops with our brain. So we need to engage with things. We need to build things, whether that is building art, a clay pot. Well, a clay pot is also a tool, right? Because you need it for as a piece of homeware for cooking, but also typing and creating code, eventually artificial intelligence. If you externalize enough of the brain through tool making, what you get is when you look out the window is what you see. All of society, all the buildings, all of architecture, all of art, all the technologies, the roads, the buildings, the cars, the computers, everything is an externalized collective mind based upon all of human history. So you're living in a museum of the past constantly. The problem with the brain is that it's always projecting the past into the present because it's using its learned experience, which can be good, but a lot of experience is learned by trauma, by survival. You could say it's sort of our lower brain, the ego and tribal. Okay, it always wants to go back to that. So what if we can summon the best of our consciousness forward, right? So for that, we need to bring the mind forward, and then in our technology, and then we can really start to hone and analyze this. So another technology that we're working on now and working on raising funds for is generative music, artificial intelligence. So the key thing here is providing tools for musicians and also helping people become creative, access their inner creativity. Music shouldn't only be for musicians. Everyone is a musician deep inside, because that's how the brain operates, through frequency. We all respond to music. Most people listen to and enjoy music, and music, pitch and beat all comes from the humans walking in the jungle in ancient times, and listening for objects and animals. We must take into account the environment for our safety, for procuring food, for finding our way through life. So pitch, harmony, rhythm, etc., represents human movement, human, dialogue, talking. It's already in our genes. It's in our brain structure. So being able to harness this and make something out of it and democratizing it is another exciting frontier. And that brings us closer to the mind, because everyone has their fundamental tone, their inner mantra, so to speak, that is uniquely theirs. And it sort of emerges from the collective and from the individual. And that is something that can be represented in music. So that's an exciting topic. So yes, we are working on a lot of things. Now, let me go back to let me close with a sort of ode to the importance of synthesis and integration. So if human knowledge and human technologies are coming from ego and tribal perspectives, because that's how we've been for most of our evolution, and we look around us and it's all, what we see around us is essentially humans feeding on each other, in a sense, with a strong amount of competition, more than collaboration, especially in Western countries, where there's at least at the economic level, there's a lot of you either make it or you don't economically. There is a big importance to take all these different aspects of humanity that everyone has to contribute, whether someone is a successful entrepreneur or a successful researcher, or they're just an ordinary person working an ordinary job, not in the intelligentsia. For us to survive global challenges together, like climate change, pandemics, the rise of artificial intelligence that's going to change the economics of the world greatly, it's important to synthesize human knowledge and integrate and coordinate humanity in a way that honors people's free will, but allows them to communicate about the things that are most important. So this is one of my passions lately has been engaging with the nonprofit organization called World System Solutions, which I'll type into the chat. So I highly recommend checking them out because they have a YouTube channel with a lot of information, and it's always open to participation from anyone. It's a nonprofit. They're building a social movement engine, which is like the next generation of a social network. But what it does is it facilitates conscious collaboration. So instead of cooperation and participation based on competition, it basically allows people to operate from their heart and their mind and be in conscious collaboration where everyone is growing together and learning to communicate in ways that really will help future generations. Our children, essentially, are going to inherit a very different world than we are. And we're, in a sense, as workers in a capitalist sort of system, we're still sort of in the rat race and in the circus of performance and making money and all these kinds of things. And our families and our future generations are affected psychologically by living in a world like this. And there are other and better ways to live that are more cooperative, that will be able to sustain future shocks. So, if we don't do this now, human population will be cut extremely drastically as there are changes in climate, as there is more and more displacement through the use of artificial intelligence, as there is hunger due to changes in resource availability, cross-border conflicts geopolitically. So these are all things that are imminent, whether we see it or not. So I believe it's important to come together from our hearts in some way to bring about these changes that we all want deep in our hearts, but we have learned to ignore because the world doesn't reward that. So, we treat in our household, we hopefully treat our family with love and care, but the outside world, we just treat with opportunism because we're just trying to make a living. And sometimes the difficulty of dealing with the outside world affects our household life negatively. And it's important to expand our circle of care, to not rely on larger powers to coordinate our society. So if there's any interest in that, I think it's important to think about synchronization, coordination, synthesis of technologies in a way that is beneficial, instead of all these disparate, unintegrated artificial intelligence, augmented reality, Internet of Things, blockchain, robotics. Technology should be serving the human future and the planetary future, not just our imminent interests. So that's my personal philosophy, a thesis, and it's part of what we do at Neural Axis with our research and our entrepreneurial endeavors. So thank you very much for listening and for engaging. Feel free to ask any questions in the minutes that are left. And please, if you're interested at all in engaging with any aspect of what I said, whether it's you want to contribute or collaborate on research towards these things, if you'd like to collaborate on any other aspect or even just engage with world system solutions, anything like that, please feel free to email me through my contact form on the neuralaxis.org website. So let me pause there and let me see any questions. To what percentage of spiritual questions is science providing answers? Maybe a non-serious question just to know from an authoritative researcher like you. I think science, frankly speaking, science does not provide satisfactory answers for most spiritual questions. And the questions of deep human psychology and emotion, science just hasn't really gotten there yet. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a question of funding and interest, and most funding and interest goes to building things, either building new drugs, building new technologies that somebody else can profit off of. So, you know, anything that involves the mind is sort of an interest that has evolved more organically and slowly in research. Even research into psychedelics or entheogenic substances that you take that can expand the consciousness, things like magic mushrooms or ayahuasca. Those things are being researched now and invested in now because there is a belief in the legalization opening new the industry as a whole, opening new economic opportunity and really designing new drugs that are free from hallucinogenic effects, or even indulging in the hallucinogenic effects and replicating them in terms of virtual reality and so on. So in other words, science has as an institution has a financial motive, as we understand. So most spiritual questions are just not covered by science, especially considering deep understandings of consciousness. I've personally discovered that things like mantras and even connecting with different sort of deity forms, whether it's Ganesh or Shiva or Skanda or Pavarati, any of these things, those are just aspects of consciousness that are unlocked when you meditate on them. They're not drawings. they're not sort of fictitious things. They're aspects of consciousness that were discovered through meditation, and then we're depicted, and they became myth, right, through storytelling. And so we regard it as non-scientific. But if you look at this scientifically, if there's a cause and there's an effect, you can study it scientifically. If you do a mantra and then it results in connection with some aspect of yourself, it can be studied scientifically. So I think there is so much more to be understood about these things scientifically than there is. Hopefully we can understand more about it, and then we can use science to tell the story and talk to people. But if you're interested in these things, I would personally advocate for not waiting for science to catch up with these realities, and simply just cultivate them yourself through different practices and techniques. I have courses on these kinds of things, by the way. That's sort of my personal passion, is sort of the exploration of the mind and then turning that into science. So that was a question. Hope that was an okay response. Yeah, thank you very much. If there's no further questions, oh yeah, here. Can AI replicate mind in the future? Something like an artificial mind? Yes. I don't think AI can replicate consciousness unless we're speaking about consciousness that's just something that's present in the universe and in every substrate, which in that case, our consciousness will emerge through AI as much as it emerges through my my headphones here. So yeah, people are working on this. I think it's going to emerge whether people work on it or not, but an artificial mind is in the works. A big part of AI, be aware of this as you go through your profession and your life. A big part of AI is people's perception. because AI is nothing more than statistics. It's just machine learning and other techniques, of course, but it's math, it's statistics, it's ways of creating an illusion, in a sense, of something being human-like. But that's because humans are a species that projects itself onto other things. If we see a face in the clouds, we see a face in the clouds, or on the moon, or a piece of toast. We see, oh, look, there's a face here. It's because we are constantly looking for ourselves in other things. So we will create an artificial mind, not because the mind is artificial, but because we want it to be there. So just like people now overestimate the abilities of AI and think it's conscious, we'll continue to do that. So AI will always appear more capable than it really is. That's my response. If there are no further questions, I will close. So thank you very much.